Every day I see it displayed before my eyes. I don't feel right about wasting company time. You either have that standard or you don't. We got a younger generation that most of them do not. Now, there are exceptions. I have a friend, well, two friends 20 years younger than me. They would be considered the millennials, but they work hard. Both of them. And neither one of them can afford to rent an apartment. Rent is today pushing half your income or more. It is ridiculous how much rent has gone up in America. It's stupid. Landlords are greedy SOBs today. Greedy. And they don't fix anything, and they raise the rent and raise the rent. And the sad thing about our society is it's encouraging people to rent and not own. And school districts keep raising property taxes to pay for absolutely zero. Transportation, where I worked, over a year ago, the previous senior director ordered 25 Thomas electric school buses, Julies they're called, at the tune of $450,000 apiece. Now, there was a grant involved. How much the school district had to pay, how much the government, whatever, tax dollars. They sat down there a year, and they recently added charging stations. One cannot start, cannot move, cannot be charged. Well, yeah, you can't have these sitting for a year. Georgia is extremely hard on anything sitting. The humidity and the heat here will destroy plastic, destroy your headliner, destroys all of your switches. You leave your windows down in your vehicle on a regular basis, the inside of your car will look like the inside of a bat cave. I've never seen anything like it. Now we have $450,000 that the taxpayers have funded for 25 yellow bricks sitting in a lot that's still, even with the charging stations, they're not giving them to drivers. I don't know what they're doing. Waste of money. The school district in America wastes more money. There's no oversight of it. The waste is unbelievable. And teachers complaining they don't make enough. Here they work basically 190, 180 days. They do not work 365 days a year. Now, nobody does, but I mean, they don't work my hours or office hours. Tina reminds me of all the vacations they have, and I'm like, oh my gosh. President's Day, we had to go to work. Martin Luther King, Juneteenth, we don't get those off. Juneteenth doesn't mean anything to me. It's a silly DEI holiday is all it is. That's it. But I've noticed, and I was just messaging my friend up in Greenville. He said only 3 of them showed up on time this morning. He took a photo of a coworker just standing there in the same position for hours on his phone. Supposed to be welding. Management doesn't do anything about it. Yesterday, the she's 10 years younger than me, lady that's supposed to be working with me disappeared around lunchtime and was hanging around her friend. And somebody from receiving said, where's her helper? I said, I have no idea. I believe she's helping. He's like, okay. I said, yeah. Then I went to the shipping clerk and I said, could you message the supervisor? Because I don't know what's going on. Can you find out if that was authorized? And he looked me in the eye and says, she's not going to last, Mike. I said, I know. 15,000 smoking breaks. Let me tell you something about these damn smokers. They do not put in an honest day's work at all. Break, break, break. We get 2 15s in an hour. And that's not enough. Guy in our wood shop, every time I come out the back bay door to go to another warehouse, he's out there smoking. Every time. And he complains about how much work he has to do. And I feel like saying, well, put that butt down and get on it. And yesterday, the last 45 minutes of the day, one of the guys says, Mike, we only got 45 minutes left. Slow down. I said, man, I got too much to do. As you can see, my helper isn't over here. And somebody made the comment, man, you just cannot get a good helper. I said, nope. 3 of you that I trained have now been farmed into different departments within our place. And they're good workers. I'm about ready to tell the boss, I know it's going to be a stretch for me, but why don't you and the shipper give me help from time to time? Don't hire anybody else for this position. Just forget it. Hire somebody else and put them somewhere else. Forget it. I mean, I'll do the best I can to keep up with all these tickets. Screw it. I'm getting tired of training clowns. Now, she's not near what the clown was that was fired, but I can already see this isn't going to work. And that's the world we live in. This stuff is good. It is an addiction. But even a comment was made yesterday, Mike, you don't get paid enough to work as hard as you do. I said, I know that. And I should have told him, I have to realize that God is my reward. The Bible says regarding slaves, obey your earthly masters, not with eye service. You've seen them. Drivers are the same way. When they see a cop, they suddenly get honest, go the speed limit and use their blinkers. If you're so confident that you're not doing anything wrong, why don't you just keep doing what you're doing? Because they're guilty. I heard the supervisor a week ago said, I know the president is out because he's having a baby, but y'all standing around over here by the clock. It's not even close to time to quit. Get back to work. And somebody mumbled, man, we only got 15 minutes left. I'm done. What the heck? Grab a broom, man. Sweep the aisles. Do something. This workplace is never caught up. What has happened to the work ethic? Why are companies willingly looking the other way? When I worked at transportation, you had 2 hotheads in the shop, both black. One had threatened me. One had threatened others. He had bragged about screwing half the women at transportation that drove buses and or were monitors. Showed pictures. What woman would let a man take pictures of them? 25 years of working there, he didn't get fired for any of that. He got fired 2 months after wrecking a bus, playing with his phone. 2 months. Any other driver, black, white, or Hispanic, would have been fired that day for that. And the director is an absolute wussy. They fired me because of a 3-minute video. And then some drivers pulled up 4 video shorts I did with me with an axe and a knife and said they felt scared for their life. What a ball of crap. Video shorts. Mob Rules thought it was cool. Tanya thought it was cool. People liked them. There was no transportation theme. I wasn't holding a school bus. I didn't even talk. And even the superintendent, who is a DEI hire, a white woman, we can't forget that. Cannot forget that. I'm sorry, but women should not be the head of a school district or in the military or police. Women should not be over men at all, ever. That's biblical. And that is one of the reasons we have so much problems with runaway feminism, and women get in power at work and they just go after us men. They don't have leadership skills. They're immature. They're feelings driven logic. And that's a bad, bad thing. But I'm watching a new crop of men today. They're woke. They're acting like a girl. People get on here and comment about the way I dress, but I don't act like a girl. I get down and buckle down and do what I got to do. And this new woman has taken, I don't know how many smoke breaks throughout the day, wandering off. But since I'm not in a supervisor position, I can't say anything. And the guy said, she ain't going to last, Mike. She tripped and fell one day, was out a week. Now she's back and she's going to, I noticed when I tell her, I need you to do this, she's like the other guy, she's going to do her will. Well, I used to pack. I used to do this. It doesn't matter what she used to do. This is the way we do it. Headstrong. Comes over and tells me what to do. I said, honey, I got this. You're not over me. What is it with this bossy butt younger generation? Bossy butts. You had all these jobs and why are you here? You worked at Bridgestone. Why are you here? And I'm already seeing she was probably let go a few places. The things you have to go through today as a man in America are ridiculous. It's not enough that you got coworkers from different walks of life that never grew up out of school and still bully and still harass, but then you got this. You got a young generation that doesn't believe in working hard. When I trained a young lady, a black lady, months ago, I liked her, but she'd take umpteen bathroom breaks, not at the bathroom in the warehouse, but walk all the way up to the office. Then she sat out on a pile of stuff in front of the time clock outside the supervisor and one of the owner's office with a window. Supervisor said, what are you doing? She goes, there's only 10 minutes left. Yeah, you work till the bell rings. He let her go just on that alone. He said, man, I'm done. He said, Mike, I had to fire your girl. I said, my girl? Since I have been there, I got to stop and count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's been 10 people fired. Don't show up. Don't show up on time. Call out. Piddle around. This isn't a company of hundreds of people. There's what, 25 of us? Not sure what the office and sales numbers are, but it's smaller than us. There's less than 50 of us. That's bad. I started in September, and 10 people have been let go. And one of them, he kept doing things and doing things and doing things and doing things and doing things, and he didn't get fired for his hassling of me or the other lady, but he failed the drug test. And this young generation has no self-awareness. They talk about respect. Let me tell you something, young punks. You don't know about respect. You don't know about the old men back in the day that fought and landed on Normandy and liberated the Auschwitz and the death camps in Germany and stormed the beaches of Japan and finally went after the islands of the Pacific. You don't know anything about respect. You and your crappy, offensive noise you call music, your attitudes, your batitudes, your lack of hygiene, your lack of work ethic. We're tired of you. When I was in my 20s, I did not backtalk somebody 20 years older than me. Ever. That's gone in most of this generation today. They're rude. Look at the internet. Look at all the jackasses that get on here and leave their stupid, rude, dumb, hateful comments all day, all night. Think that they're tough. Yeah, you were raised by a mom and no dad. That's evident. Probably on drugs, probably addicted to violent video games, probably live in the basement. And God knows what else you're doing. And it seems like the workplace is just rewarding anybody that participates today. The schools years ago started this nonsense. No child left behind. That started with Bush. Pass them on through whether they're passing or not. And we don't want to make anybody feel bad. We don't want to make it look like the white guy's getting rewards because that's discrimination. Well, if the white guy's winning all the stuff and doing well in the school, he or she should be rewarded. If the black guy does it, he or she should be rewarded. Why are we basing everything off DEI today? So we can talk about Trump being in office, but let me tell you something. Him being in office has not solved any of these problems. Trust me, he's better than Crapola. But the evil is right there, and it's not backing down. And it's the cancer that's infected generations. That is not going to go away. We are always a microscopic hair's width away from Democrat takeover. We are always that close. CNN, the news networks are still doing the same thing they did pre-Trump. They're lying, they're smearing. Look at how they've handled ICE and the protesters, talking crap about federal agents. When I was a kid, that did not go on. Sure, there was the 60s. They called the cops pigs and stuff like that. But most of society did not condone the 60s BS. All it was open in-your-face rebellion. Young generation didn't want restraint. Sex, drugs, rock and roll. And a lot of those clowns became judges and school teachers and lawmakers. No wonder our country's whacked and jacked. But you got this work ethic today. And I'll put myself up against most of these Southerners any day. They still make digs at the Northerners. You have people in transportation that are horrible, unsafe, racist, black employees. Nothing happens to them. They drive the buses in an unsafe manner. They speed. They'll grab somebody else's bus, not sweep it. Drivers are complaining. Management doesn't do a thing. But I was a danger because I made 4 video shorts, because I did a video decrying the savage, brutal beatdown of a white woman in Cincinnati. They call each other the N-word out there. I don't use it. Virtue signaling is real. My work ethic far surpassed them all. Far surpassed them all. Even many of them said, man, Mike, did you ever slow down? Yesterday, the shipping clerk said, Mike, are you single? I said, yeah. And they were commenting on the energy that I had. And he said, ma'am, if you get a girlfriend or a wife, you better give her an umbrella. And everybody started laughing. I'm like, oh, you're so bad. Meaning because of my energy, I'm going to explode and rain, you know what, all over her. Like, wow. And even he is black, and he said, you know what bothers me about people like you? And he said, I'm not bothered by you. He said, I'm making a point. He said, you work your butt off harder than even myself, and you'll never get rewarded for it. And I said, I know. But you know what, folks? God. Am I laying up treasures on earth or treasures in heaven? What is it? When God makes you a certain way, then be that way. Shine. I said long time ago, we were friends with a couple. He was GQ and she was smoking hot from Swedish background. She was good looking. And it was ironic. She would complain about men lusting, but she'd come over to our house with him. She'd walk around in public with no bra and nipples protruding through her shirt. She was small-chested. She had long Swedish blonde hair and blue eyes. I mean, she looked like she came off the cover of a magazine. William and Dana. They were eccentric. William was eccentric, but he had rheumatoid arthritis so bad. He had to take ibuprofen every day just to deal with the pain. He had horses for their daughters. He built a beautiful house out in Parker, Colorado, with architectural salvage and everything. I mean, William was incredible. He's a Christian. They homeschooled their girls. And Dana, they'd have Bible studies with her mother, and these women seemed almost puritanical. And Dana would comment on lust, and yet she dressed provocatively. I said, isn't that funny? White women are so good at that double standard. And I say white because I see so much of that. Christian women in the church showing cleavage, complaining about men and their lust. And I want to go up and say, what's this, honey? What's this? What are these? You're showing it all. Really? And I liked Dana and William, but William, he actually got mad at me once. I said, I don't believe in getting in debt. And I'm praying that God will provide me a house without a mortgage. He never got mad at me. He says, wow, that must be nice. Most people have to work hard just to be able to get approved for a mortgage, and you just want a house with no mortgage. He said, that, you got a lot of nerve. And I said, do I? Or do I discipline myself to save up and pay cash for it? Well, I called him one day, said, my wife's mother died and we just inherited a house. It's paid for. And I left that world behind and I bought this house without a mortgage. The Bible says something. It says, owe no man anything. Owe no man anything but the debt to love one another. The only debt that we should be in is to love. And I'm going to say something, and it's true of me and all of us. We as Americans are the worst at that. We'll get in debt for cars, trucks, four-wheelie toys, jet skis, boats, homes, even home improvement loans, vacation loans, but we don't have any concept of debt to love one another. Somebody offends us, that's it, bye. We are butthurt, we are overly sensitive. We do not typically hang out with people slightly different than us. We complain about cliques in the church. Now, I admit, I ain't going to bring a bunch of pot smokers and party animals in here. Not okay with that. But I make it a point to reach across the aisle at people that are not just like me. Do you? I don't believe it is God's will for Michael to be in a mortgage. I believe it is God's will for Michael to trust God for his daily bread. And I asked him for a house, and he provided. Sometimes you have to make a sacrifice. If you want that Beverly Hills 90210 house, yeah, you're not going to be able to save enough money for that. And you're going to have to get deeply in slavery. I chose to move to Augusta because I was given the prompt by a friend who lived out here. And we can kick this around. Well, Michael, should you move there? I was led here. And yeah, I've griped about it. But there are some good things that have come by living here. And some of those things I'm not going to share with people because people are evil. But I have no doubt that God has placed me here. Just because I have 10,000 subscriptions on YouTube does not mean there's 10,000 people in Augusta sitting at my feet. They're not there. And you know what I begin to see? God brought me here. And it hasn't happened here. And that's why I'm here. That my house becomes a studio to broadcast to the rest of the world, to reach those that are different, that are struggling. If things were going good, if I lived in paradise, would I even be on here? Probably not. And people like to tell me what to do and this and that. Why don't you just sell? My son even said, why don't you sell that crib? Crib? This ain't my crib. I put my heart and soul into this. This ain't my crib. We live in evil times, folks. We see this Jeffrey Epstein thing unfold. I'm so tired of talking about it. It's disgusting. You got links to Goldman Sachs and the bankers and Rothschilds and Obamas and Clintons, and Prince Andrew was arrested not because he Humpty Dumpty'd teen girls. Elon Musk even wanted to know when the pizza party was. It blows me away that none of those clowns have been arrested and they're walking around free. Rumor has it Bill Gates has kind of disappeared. I wonder why. Got guilt? But Melinda knew what he was doing. She didn't say anything back then. She should be arrested as well. I don't understand this crap. ABC said they had knowledge of it. Why weren't they subpoenaed and brought into a court? Why did the FBI investigate this 20 years ago and do nothing? Yeah, this is America. Let me say something to everybody listening. We will never make America great again. That MAGA thing is a bunch of crap. It ain't great. It hasn't been great for decades now. And we're not bringing it back. Look around, pay attention, pull your head out of your butt cheeks, and realize what is going on. Evil is on the throne in this country. It even exists within us. We have compromised, all of us. The young generation sucks. Not every one of them, but the majority. They have no respect. They have no taste in music. We had a black guy that runs our paint booth. He's young, and he got his phone Bluetooth to some speakers in there. It sounds like the club. I said, I noticed you're playing some old school stuff. He goes, I like old school, man. I said, that's awesome. He not listening to that mother effing NIGGA blah, 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 blah. Crap is all that is. Just absolute trash can. And those of you listening that got a problem with me saying that, I don't care. It's garbage. You want to eat out of the trash can? Go ahead. But I don't need to hear it. I don't want to hear it. It's a sign that you are in a culture of fail. Rap today is trasharoo. I'll put Gordon Lightfoot, I'll put ELO, I'll put America, I'll put Moody Blues, I'll put any of the artists I grew up with up against this garbage today. Actual talent. Some of this music I hear sounds like robot, keyboard, computerized stuff. It's like, wow, I could do that. Give me the stuff, I could make it. Taylor Swift and Katy Perry are not what I call talent. That's bubblegum after all the flavor's gone. That's all they're producing. Girl hairspray music. Even Fleetwood Mac stands head and shoulders above the female vocalists of today. Way above that. Bands like SOS Band, the Gap Band, and Barry White, and Whitney Houston, and Diana Ross, Supremes, and Pointer Sisters. What happened to that good stuff? What happened to that lady? Don't make me over. What happened to them? The couple that did Don't Stop the Music. This stuff today, and I'm going to say it, as we edge closer to the precipice, music, literature, and the arts have suffered. Look at TV today. You can't watch anything without them pushing a leftist, political, woke, gay, pro, every ethnicity but white agenda. It's stupid. TV isn't TV anymore. The newspaper's just about gone, except the crummy crap, the Washington Post and the New York Times. Both of those aren't even good for wiping your butt cheeks after you go to the toilet. There's nothing journalistic about it. Journalism doesn't mean that anymore. Science doesn't mean science anymore. Science has become a religion of atheists to pigeonhole their faith-based teaching of evolution, and there's nothing science about it. And they love to hide behind that word and say, oh, well, Christians don't believe in science. We believe in science more than you clowns do. That ain't science. It takes more faith to believe that the world just came into existence out of random nothingness with no designer. That is absolute stupidity. And I already talked about that the other day. The flat earthers, the globally warming extremists, all living their best life now in mansions. Oprah votes Democrat. She's got 8 mansions, count them. None of them in a black area. None of them in her own ethnic neighborhood. Let that sink in. Clown Whoopi Goldberg on The View admitting that her name was mentioned in the Epstein. Well, you need to deal with facts, and there's no facts. Oh, you're telling us we need to deal with facts. As you slam Trump, slam conservatives, slam everybody, make anti-Israeli comments. Yeah, you're a fine one to talk about facts. Whoopi Goldberg is literally what is wrong with women in our culture. The View is literally what is wrong with women in our culture. They're not journalists. They're not intellectuals. They're middle school girls with their little cliquey club. Just like kids playing house, they're playing media. And it's disgusting. That I had a fake plastic microphone and a plastic news desk and say, here you go. The show's an offense. To call it The View? How arrogant and presumptuous. It isn't The View, it's A View, and it is wrong. Who watches that? Silly girls that never grew up, that don't believe in this, that don't think for themselves. Open head, insert mush, shut lid, carry on. I wouldn't go on The View for all the money in the world. Be like throwing a brand new or a kitten over the fence with a bunch of rabid and feral hungry pit bulls. I wouldn't go in there. I wouldn't even get a fair shake. They'd all out overtalk me, steamroll right over me. That show is garbage. But the work ethic, it slid down the toilet too. Slid down the toilet. This grown man that was working with us, 35, 310 pounds, 6'8". I said, you need to go to the trailer and get these cushions. Mike, I ain't going up in no trailer. I said, what, you can't do the job duties that you're required to do? I'm 60 years old and I'm going to get up in there and get it and you won't do it? I said, dude, you're 8 times my strength. And you're going to tell me what you're not going to do. I ain't going to mess up my knees, Mike. Man, can somebody give him a frickin' high chair and a crib or a playpen? If I'd have done jobs based on I might get hurt, I would have just stayed home. Like Femyaz, who wants to sit on here as a young brat and comment about the world and disrespect God-fearing people and people that do not agree with his ridiculous lifestyle. He said himself, the idea of getting a job scares me. Of course it does, because you get out in the real world and run those lips of yours, somebody may punch out more than just the clock. Kid, they may punch out you. You get out there around real men, they ain't going to put up with your horse crap. E-Rock is a bigger man than me, physically, and guys run their mouth at him. Say rude things to him. He is the hardest worker at his factory. He has threatened to quit, and they do not want him to leave. They're getting ready to move the company to another new facility. And they're demanding that they come in and work overtime on Saturday. And he said, you got to be kidding me. I work overtime Monday through Friday, and I got to come in on my weekend? And then they increase the production before they're even moved in the other place. And he said that his back was hurting the other day. He has to slam his body weight in these pieces of steel to make sure they curve just right as they come through the rollers or whatever. He said, people can't do what I do. And they won't say anything to the welders that stand around. They won't say anything to the people that are out smoking pot when it's not break time. My friend Tony up in Cleveland, Amazon, certain usual suspects go out on their break and light up doobies right there in the Amazon parking lot. I'm going to say it. I don't want to work next to drug user people. There is a culture that goes with that. They're not intellectual. They're not going to be my friends. And it's not because I'm so self-righteous and better. That's not it. A lifestyle of marijuana use and a lifestyle of Michael Nelson, they don't go together. It's like oil and water. And that's the world I'm living in. You're thrown into a workplace with hostile people. You get rid of one bad guy and things change. Just like on a school bus when I used to be a driver. Your bus is acting up, they're rude, and then you find the clown in the back of the bus, and you finally get him busted and off. The 79 other children on there suddenly go, whoa. One bad apple does spoil the bunch. Now quantify that. Half the voting public in America voted for Biden, Hillary, Obama. Half. How many of those have we won over? How many of those are like a ship with no stabilizer? Well, I think I'm going to vote this way this time. I think I'm going to vote this way this time. They're fence riders. We've got Hollywood. We've got a school district nationwide. I don't think most people realize that was a beautiful idea. To have a public school linked and connected to colleges, linked and connected to the universities, that you could go to university in the USA and go to one in China and Russia and get the same teaching. And nobody bothered to connect the dots that they're all promoting socialism and anarchy. The education system in America today is not your friend. They should shut down the public schools. They should start teaching kids how to get a trade. HVAC, electronics, auto mechanics, construction. Get these freaking illegals out of this country and pay them what they're worth. When I was in the 80s as a kid, when I was in Mammoth, it was white people framing and putting up buildings. Not all these Mexicans from across the border. People say, oh, the white people don't want the jobs. That is a lie. When the illegals came in, they paid them way less. A white guy can't make it off what they pay the illegals. That's why they vacated the landscaping and a lot of these jobs. Companies in America are all about profit, all about reducing their overhead. That's why you go to Walmart and there's no cashiers anymore. One lady oversees how many do-it-yourself registers. You go to an auto shop today, they gouge the hell out of you. That's become criminal. These vehicles they're making today are throwaway Dixie Cup cars and trucks. Dixie Cups. That goes for you, Ford, Chevy, and Cummins. Dixie cups. And you get in debt for an $80,000 Silverado, in 20 years, you will own nothing and be crappy. Why would you pay $80,000 for a piece of junk coming out of GM today, Ford, or Chevy? It ain't going to last 20, 25 years. The electronics ain't going to survive that long. They're only required to carry parts for 10 years. It's getting harder and harder to find parts for a 99 F-150. And that's already got failed systems when I bought it. The door locks don't work. You hear it. The windows go down slow. The odometer goes zzz, zzz, zzz. Junk. The gay blender motor. The cheapest, crappiest plastic. With a stud that comes down and turns a plastic gear. It wears it out. And to get down to it, you got to get on your back, your legs hanging out the door, on the hump, in the passenger and seating area, and unbolt a numerous bunch of junk to get to this piece of crap. Top rank? $600. I spent $10 on a Harbor Freight small socket set and did it myself. Well, I took the blender motor out so I can get defrost. Now soon I'll have to put the blender motor that doesn't work back in so the damper will stay on cool. I replaced the blender motor. It didn't work. I'm not even going to try to get up and get that dang stupid whatever it is. I don't even want the truck anymore. And the trucks I grew up on are so dang old. If you see one restored, they want $27,000 or $32,000 for a '65 Chevy Mint. We're being ripped off, folks. Programmed failure. Programmed poverty. And you go to work today and you're happy to have a job and you work with trash. No work ethic, smarting off to everybody, lounging around, wasting time. They don't get fired. They don't get sent packing. You know how you get fired today? Anger somebody in management's ego. That's it. Now, if I was to stop and be lazy, my supervisor would be on me saying, what are you doing? I thought I'd skate through the day. Everybody else does. In fact, I'd come in and wear roller skates in the warehouse. Mike, you can't wear those in here. Everybody else is skating. I thought I'd wear real skates. When you know God, then you live by the conviction that He sees. God enabled me to buy a house without a mortgage because I prioritized saying, if you promise to meet my daily needs, then there's no place for debt in my life. I hated apartment living. I hated noisy, stupid neighbors. High rents, landlords don't fail. I'm sick of it. My house has its own headaches, but it's mine. And I pay less than I would pay for a damn rental. You have to make a sacrifice. Young people, they want to go straight to Beverly Hills 90210. Can't do that, kid. You got to work your way up. And guess what? Even if I was worth $1 billion tomorrow, I would not buy a mansion. I would not live in Beverly Hills. I would not join a country club. I would not buy a Lexus. I wouldn't change who I am. I'd go buy that 65 Chevy. Dual exhaust straight pipes. Flowmasters. Glass packs, whatever. I'd have a truck when you started it. That had a nice little wah, wah, wah. And you just put it into drive and it just drove out of the driveway without even touching the pedal. These people buy these scat packs that are just ear-splitting, really angering noise. Here in Augusta, they buy Crown Vics with 3-foot McDonald's pimpy rims on it, playing crappy music looking like a commercial of I'm Loving It. Cheap, tacky, ghetto, pimped. And they take pride in that. At least the Mexicans knew in California how to take an old 60s Impala and do something really awesome with it. This culture out here, then they created the ass sag pickups and SUVs. It wasn't enough that they walk around with their pants down. Now they wanted the butt end of their vehicle like this. How do you spell retard? Right there. I had somebody call me a racist on Facebook. In fact, a black man cussed me out and yelled all kinds of racial obscenities at me because I responded to some post. I said, this pants sag thing is no class. It is wrong. And I was called a racist with the F word and expletives. I said, dude, I don't want to see a grown man's butt crack. Get real. I don't understand how any guy could look at another man's butt crack and go, ooh. I don't even want to see my own butt crack. I wear regular fit jeans, not ass sag pants. I may go shirtless. I may dress provocatively this way, but I ain't showing my butt, and I'm not framing my nuts, and I'm not wearing frickin' spandex panties and pants, ball framing clothing. That's gross. The older generation had their flaws. But I did grow up with a grandpa, the family that adopted me. And he had his problems. He had a problem with alcohol. He had a stack of porn in the den. But Papa, he sailed merchant ships, liberty ships. He loved the sea, and he looked like an old salt, barrel-chested, short, squat. His skin was so bronzed, he looked like a Pacific Islander, Hawaiian guy with the face with exotic features, and yet he was Irish to the core. He looked like he'd have a Hawaiian button-up shirt on. Papa looked straight out of Hawaii in a dang tiki village. He could have been a tribal chief leader. And he had the most unique property on Osage Street in Lawndale, California that I'd ever seen in my life. what I wouldn't give to have that property back in time today. A pink stucco, low slung 1940s, 1950s house. That house was bizarre. The backyard was bizarre. It was very deep. It was 3 lots deep, 3 city lots deep. And the neighbors on all the other sides had done flag lots. They built a house behind it, another house with a continuous drive where you could turn out, and rented the other 2 houses and made them income properties while they lived in the one house. Papa still had palm trees that were big around that I could get my arms around. Short, squat palm trees. He had catamarans and big glass fishing floats and old fishing nets and shippy stuff and stuff laying around everywhere. And he'd buy us Tonkas at the flea market and spray paint them all black. My cousin and I laugh about that to this day. Remember when Papa would buy us a truck with a couple dings at the flea market and spray paint the whole thing jet black? Old koi ponds that were no longer being used with the crumbling rock formation walls around them. The Lord's Prayer inscribed on a windy sidewalk that came out the back door of the den dining room. And 2 koi ponds on either side and cherubic statues of cement. All kinds of weird stuff in that yard. And the tiki room, what they called the den, was for family gatherings. Big rafters, tongue and groove, dark wood, and a big stone fireplace in there. And the paneling outside had carvings in it where you could see the light through, and there was fishnets strung inside. Man, that was a dang kid's dream. These clowns in sports that buy white, gleaming white pimpy cars and pimpy Escalades and white mansions with white carpet. Give me that house on Osage Avenue when you shut the door and it made a distinct sound. And in the bathroom, the old humidity-filled bathroom that Pop would have his sailor magazines, and it showed a woman in a skirt and a naval shirt on with her breast pointed like torpedoes, standing on the deck holding a piece of rigging. I'm like, I know why Papa liked going to sea. And he had a fish tank. He stood in the tub of the shower, the fish tank in the wall, and it was painted black from the bathroom side, but you removed a panel and you could change out the water and stuff, and you went in the den and you could see the fish tank. He said when he bought the house, there was a grouper, some big ugly fish, just barely fit in it, circling. My mother bought him a monkey at the swap meet when she was little, and they came home to find the monkey up on the shelf, pooped and threw it at Papa, and Papa said, "Monkey's gotta go." I remember one time when I was in middle school, he had a duck, and I'd hold that little baby duck in my hands, one of the most retarded pictures of myself, and I can't find it. Me holding that duck with my lips looking like, yep, I look like middle school. I look so retarded, it's not even funny. And had this velour shirt on that was gay as it gets. That's what they dressed us in. They had a Toyota Chinook in the backyard. By the time I hit high school, I'd sleep out there. Papa and D ever. They had a whole low back blue couch, more squared off with the spindly wooden legs. That was my bed. So I got older, and then I slept either in my dad's camper to be stored in the wintertime because Mammoth, the snow was oppressively killer and it would have crushed the camper, or I slept in the Chinook. And I'd hear the doves in the morning. Ooh, 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 ooh. When I was a kid, I'm like, what makes that noise? Papa's backyard looked like something you would see in Hawaii. I think Papa's house was owned by a Japanese family once. Now that I look back and you look at the den, that's something the Japanese would have built. Fascinating piece of property. And behind all that was the old garage. And it had the door that you grab the handle, pulled it up, and you'd hear the creaking of those big, long springs. And he'd work on old tube radios, phonographs, and sit back there and drink his stash. He sailed merchant ships in Vietnam, hauling napalm, hauling tanks, and he would tell stories with gusto at family gatherings. I remember one time on the Pacific Ocean, Michaelmas, the tanks would break loose from the chains on the deck and slide from one side, and the captain would say, nobody on deck. This young generation, what do they got? Smoking pot, shitty music, shitty manners, shitty morals, shitty hygiene, shitty attitudes, shitty work ethic. Isn't it fun? Even as a kid, Papa had his flaws, but there were things that I look back on. It's like he had old hand tools and hand drills and inclined planes, and I could work on stuff. And I wasn't close to Papa. I was too hyper for him. And like I said, when people don't understand something, they criticize the heck out of it. Papa definitely had his problems. And my mother idolized him too much and made him out to be sinless. My cousin and I knew better. But Papa did have some things, and he never got to live long enough to realize it, that he passed on to me. His wife gave me a love for the world around me. Dee Dee was an intellectual. She had Depression-era glass. Papa had old ocean liner put together models on the top mantle above the dining room table, a seashell shelf above the kitchen sink. The kitchen sink and cabinetry were that porcelain enamel steel. I would die to get one of those in my house. I looked up a couple. They looked good, except you open the inside, it was gutted with rust. The metal gone. I'm like, oh, that was 1950s. The old cold spot fridge and the hot point stove. I remember when I became a high school student, I walked into the kitchen and one day it just seemed so tiny. When I was a kid, the shelf was way up here. Now I was looking at it. It's funny how things change. Papa would tell us stories. He had an old copper 60 Chevy truck. I remember the sound of that thing turning over. He had a Chevy Love. He'd always have a weird collection of vehicles. Had a Ford Courier at one time, one of the old ones. Dee Dee had a gold Rambler station wagon with the curb feelers. She'd take us to the duck pond, El Escondido Park. She'd take me by the cement truck place where the trucks would pull up, get the cement loaded in the drum, and take off. Papa'd take me down to the San Pedro. We'd watch the ships come in. Michaelmas, the only way you'll become a man is if you put out to sea. And I never did. The only port he never went to was Hong Kong. And I know I don't believe I can talk to the dead. But I stood in Hong Kong and I said, Papa, I covered that one for you. The only eulogy I ever wrote was to Papa. Papa thought I was hyper. He believed my mother about all the horror stories she told about me. But Papa's handed some things to me whether he realized it or not. I spent more time with relatives going to their house. Dee Dee'd say, well, let me have the kids and give you and Fred a break. Dee Dee and Papa did not realize they exposed me. They were not rich. They didn't buy new stuff. Dee Dee had a big giant plastic bowl and buy the bags of the cheap potato chips, Shasta Pop. Dee Dee made people feel at home. Papa'd have something on the table that was interesting. It was a see-through plastic turn the crank working V8 engine where you could see how it all moves. He gave me a V-shaped magnet from a Model T Ford Magneto. Weird stuff. Those 2 United States tins I have came from them. The other relatives bought us shiny new stuff. I don't own any of that to this day. I have a few things from Papa and Dee Dee. Papa took me to the Queen Mary. I wrote a poem after he died called The Old Man and the Sea, a take off Hemingway's book. I don't have it here. It's in my uncle's in Washington. I wrote some poetry. And it's a 1 page. And I wrote it in Duluth. And I sent it to my mother. My mother's a hard woman. My mother was not touchy-feely. And I did not have a good relationship with her. My mother wept when she read it. She made copies and sent it to her closest friend, Carol Hughes, who was a comedian. She sent it to people, and the following statement was made. Michael wrote this. That is beautiful. I had no idea Michael had all that in him. Yeah, because you weren't looking. This young generation can kiss my little white butt. I will still appreciate some of the older stuff. It was timeless. Papa told me he hired me to do some yard work for him one day when he got older, and he moved to Prescott Valley, and he moved into a double wide, and it just wasn't the same. My mother had them move out of Lawndale because they were getting older, and she wanted them close. I remember helping load the moving truck and walking through that house going, wow, this is the last time I'll ever see Osage Avenue again. Papa was a museum of an era that's gone. And yeah, he had his faults. And he was pretty hard on me. But something's gone. That rock solidness That garage with tools everywhere, old chair being sanded and refinished, empty koi ponds, and a bird bath with an angel in it. Stuff. The weird stuff that was in the yard and on the property. In the middle of all that confusion, the Lord's Prayer written on the sidewalk. That place was a trip. And we kids would roam that yard and enjoy ourselves. Pop would come out the back of the house. Michael Mass, what are you doing? Nothing. I don't know about that. He scared the living stuff out of me with that voice. My cousin, who was born to their daughter, my aunt, said, you have more in common with Papa than anybody in the family. I said, I know. My grandma in San Gabriel on my dad's side, I loved her as a kid. But Papa and Dee Dee had more effect. Dee Dee'd hand me a stack of geographics when I was little and slept on the couch. Now, Michael, don't wake up, everybody. I got up at the butt crack of dawn then, just like I do now. Papa come in the back of the house. Doris, what's for dinner? And he had two dogs, Pandora, which was a Chihuahua with fur. It was a mix between a Chihuahua and something else. Had bat ears, cute little thing. And then Annabelle. Those dogs would bark. Pop would say, Pandora, Annabelle, pipe down. Pipe down. He'd stand there with that poker face, that Hawaiian-looking bronze face with that look, and you just looked at him and went, man, what's funny, Michael Mass? Oh my gosh. What happened to relatives like that? What happened? The fact that Papa and Dee Dee spent time with me, it rubbed off. I don't have depression glass and I don't have any ocean liner bottles, but my life is eclectic like his. I don't want a designer home, ever. That house had warmth and charm and personality. He had a little brass boat bell front outside the door, ding ding, that you rang. When you opened the den, it had a Buddha that you turned sideways to pull the door open. Weird stuff. And even my uncle, when I talked to him, he said, Papa was from another planet, Michael. That house was unlike any. I said, but I love that place. He goes, I know you did. It was very eclectic. I said, it was full of, there was always something to look at. Dee Dee, what is that glass? That's depression glass, Michael. I mean, you'd see something different every time you stared at something in the room. I was fascinated with the giant clamshell. I wanted the giant clamshell. An octopus in a jar of formaldehyde. A baby shark. I had a expanded puffer fish dried and a little one dried. Papa and Dee Dee and the pink stucco house on Osage Street. And when I woke up in the morning on the corner of the street, there was a sand and gravel lot, and you'd hear that front end loader. Papa was a working man, lived in a working neighborhood. Papa was respected by all. These kids are horrible today. Very rude. They're questioning their sexuality. They're questioning everything. They don't know who they are. Society's remolding and destroying them. I'm watching young ladies that have made nice comments on my channel dye their hair, try to be sexy on YouTube, listening to music with BITCHASSNIGGER. And I'm going, you know what? Papa would have paddled my butt to highest heaven if I'd have listened to anything like that. And my sister had listened to that. When they came out with I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett, my mother did not like that music. I didn't either. I used to give her a hard time. I said, that music sucks. But guys, they like it when women become men. I heard a guy at work yesterday said, I'm dating a tom girl and she gets down and dirty with me and works on breaks. Men like women to be men. And then men will come on here and criticize my dress. I'm like, really? And I don't have a girlfriend. And it has nothing to do with this. And I have had to realize I'm too different for any woman in America. That I begin to see that the only hopes I have is if by chance, and I don't see that happening, is if I was to go overseas, I could have a love. And I don't think it's going to happen here. Oh, I talk to people. They flake off. You send a message, days go by, even in the text, or short but sweet. And it just tells me there's no point in investing in people. Invest in your friends, invest in your channel, invest in your world. Be nice. Don't give up hope, but don't hold on too tightly that anything's going to come of anything with any woman, because it isn't. Papa and Dee Dee just seemed like that was going to be the way it was forever. For all the years as a kid, that was a constant. The weird yard, the weird house, the den. And as they began to age, the den became filled with clutter and Playboys and Christmas decorations shoved in the corner. You could hardly move in there. And change was always in the air. What I wouldn't do to go back with my mind today and sit at the dining room table and listen more aptly at attention to Papa's stories about his life on the ocean. And he was dramatic. He'd slam his fist down. The waves came down. Bam! And what I learned, there's no such thing as an atheist in a storm on a ship, Michael Mass. He'd scare the stuff out of us when he'd slam his fist down for drama. He was a magnificent storyteller. Just the sound of his voice commanded authority. Barrel-chested, bronze-skinned man with a face that looked Hawaiian. He looked like he could have come out of a Hawaiian tribe. He'd been on the ocean so long. You could tell he had the Irish in him. But Papa was unlike anybody else. I will never in my life meet a man like Papa. Dee Dee was always the smooth everything out, make everybody comfortable. You couldn't have deep conversations with Dee Dee. Never about touchy-feely stuff. You could talk about National Geographic. She'd always say, there'd be a TV. That was a very interesting program, Michael. Program. She'd tell my sister, now don't muss up your hair. Don't muss up your clothing. She was very British. But her conversations were not going to get deep. You were not going to pierce the epidermis with deep thinking. Nor with Papa. I never would have sat down and said, talk about the stuff we talk about. God forbid. But yet, I still hold them in reverence. Papa stayed with his wife, faults and all. They stayed together. They had their, Dee Dee would never fight and argue. They lived in separate bedrooms. Dee Dee's light would be on all night long. I thought, does this woman ever sleep? Probably not. Her light never went off. Dee Dee got excited when I'd learned something. We rode each other back and forth in Duluth. She said, Michael, you're so much more than a school bus driver. I wish you would write. I liked driving a bus. I like seeing the sun rise on Lake Superior in the morning from the east. I love the snowstorms. And I'd write a little bit. Never published anything. Got a couple letters to the editor throughout the country and in Hong Kong, published. Writing is not so easy. My penmanship is terrible. My articulation is awesome. And I've been affected by sin. When I tell my story of the Microo, I definitely want to put some racy, sensual things in there. But as a Christian, I think I can't do that. Christians will just condemn me to highest heaven. We embrace what we like, right or wrong. I closed the poem. I miss the old man and the sea. I referred to him as an old salt. I brought stuff that I remember. My mother, only then did she begin to see the depth that lay deep within me that she didn't have anything to do with. Papa Dee Dee, in their own silent way, affected me. My bedroom is not designed like modern bedrooms. Everything, this is Papa. This kind of stuff. This weird, eccentric, eclectic Japanese tapestry that was made by a Filipino friend. I love Papa's house because it was passionately real, eclectic. It was storybook. When you went in there, it was a world. That pink stucco house on Osage Street. Nobody knew from the outside. Life changes. Society has changed. I have changed. Papa and Dee Dee are gone. Sadly, I don't believe they're in heaven. Though Dee Dee would occasionally send me stuff and include a poem by Helen Steiner Rice, who was a Christian woman. I think Dee Dee was into Scientology, if I remember correctly. And I don't subscribe to that. She never talked about God or faith. She never talked about politics. Papa was a staunch Democrat. But I can promise you this, he'd be appalled at what the Democrat Party stands for today. He would be appalled and angry. He wrote a letter to the editor in the Press Courier a few years before he got asbestos. He worked in the shipyards on the East Coast, blowing asbestos in the engine rooms. The stuff is nasty. The little fibers get all into your lungs and cause asbestos. There was a class action suit by one of the shipbuilders, and they paid him, don't know how much, but he got a settlement, and it ultimately killed him. Plus, he smoked. He'd have that deep cough and that booming voice. But you thought as a kid Papa would be there forever. That's why I wish I could get one of the anchors from the Titanic's bow. The anchor's a symbol. The Titanic is rotting and decomposing in those anchors, still held by the chains, 175-pound each link. The older generation was an anchor. In spite of their faults, they passed us something. There's a lack of quality to the age in which we live. Papa told me the story of how he met Dee Dee. She worked for the city of Long Beach in the municipal building. He said, I fell in love with her and we said our dues under a palm tree on the beach. How fitting. I wouldn't call them romantic and touchy-feely. They were the older generation. You wouldn't see them hug and touch. They just didn't do that. You didn't hear them say, I love you. But something has to be said that they managed to make it work till the end. Dee Dee outlived him by a few years. When people like that leave, it's like the Titanic sinking. Something's gone that will never be recovered. And I'm 59 and a little bit strange. But even I know the older generation had some damn good things about them. This young generation has nothing to offer me. Nothing but a headache. And I shudder to think of what's going to happen to this country when I have to be taken care of by somebody and those young generations in control. I pray to God, His grace and mercy, I'm not here. I pray that God will never let me outlive my usefulness. I pray that I either go up in a rapture or I'm visiting another country somewhere and walk on the beach and walk into the sunset and leave the world right there. Yeah, I wish I could pick the way I leave this world. I don't get that choice. Papa and Dee Dee had more effect on me than anybody in my family. I carry within myself some of them. I do. He called the stereo the hi-fi. He didn't say batteries, he said batteries. Now I bought this for you, Michael, and you'll need to get some batteries. Papa wouldn't tolerate this young generation. He would have taken a fan belt and struck them across the face for their rudeness. You may think that's harsh, but you young generation are very harsh. You're very rude. You're very foul. Your music sucks. Your interests suck. And you want us to show you respect, and you can't come to work on time. You can't change a spare tire. You can't do anything. And you're looking down on us and making fun of us and mocking us on YouTube and all over. You ought to be hit with a rubber hose. Zoom! 39 times across the back until it knocks some sense into you. My Papa would have tore up my back end if I'd have ever disrespected him and his wife. Would have tore me up from stem to stern. And it should happen today. You guys talk about abuse. You're abusing us. You're abusing the workplace. You're abusing the grace of God. You're abusing elderly people. Had a 35-year-old DEI clown for 1 month harass and vex my soul. Thank you, God, that he was fired. I hope he falls on his face and gets right with God. I'm sick and tired of the disrespect. Cardi B and Nicki Minaj garbage, sewage music, making millions of dollars, my grandpa would have been just, that ain't right. And he wrote his last letter to the editor in the Prescott Courier talking about the 90s when they were burning the flag. And he said, I have sailed the oceans. I fought in World War II, from the decks of Liberty ships, sailed supplies to Vietnam. And these people that burned the flag ought to be tarred and feathered and sent out. He was a Democrat, and he had no tolerance for the disrespect of stars and bars. You got people in the South toppling over Robert E. Lee and toppling statues and want to get rid of the Confederate flag. It's history. Deal with it. Everything's racist. Oh, but you guys aren't. And I asked Papa once when I was working in the yard as a young adult, Papa, do you think it would be wrong for me to date a black woman? And he did not answer in the way many would think. Michael Mass, there are some beautiful black women out there. What you need to be aware of is their culture is very different than ours. And even if you and her got along, the family may or may not accept it. And he said some things I'll never forget that were the rock solid truth on black culture. Papa wasn't racist at all. He went in and out of foreign ports. He was fascinated by the world. But he said some profound things. And now I live in Augusta and I see it playing out. I don't believe that a black woman and I would ever work. Their thinking, their politics, the way they view the world around them is so different than mine. But guess what? I couldn't even marry most white women. The culture I got along with the best was Asian. It'd probably be better for me to find an Asian woman my age who still got some vitality, energy, and some looks that wants a working man like me that'll love her. Caucasian women play games. They like to tease and get their attention gas tank filled. I've lived 59 years, folks. And yet I moved to the wrong place to meet Asian women. The few that are at the flea market and sell stuff, they're miserable. They're all about money. They're serious. They're not friendly. They're not warm. I mean, I live in a world of dichotomies. And I know God's doing a work in my life. I don't have access to pretty dates. God knows. God knows if I get with a woman that I'm not very strong in that department. If she wants to make love, I will. He's put me in detox for years. I just think it's interesting that out of all the years, my mother had negative influence on me. Papa and Didi had their problems, but they had a positive influence on me. Stuff I carry with me to this day. This young generation, if they were around in my grandpa's generation and talked the way they talk, somebody would have taken them in a back alley and cleaned their clock. And that's the problem. It's not happening. They're not getting disciplined at home. They're not getting disciplined in schools. The police dance and prance around them, and they enable them to get worse and worse. And then all that remains for these young people is to become so arrogant that God finally says, I've had enough. Bam! Young people, listen to me. I don't care what you think of me. I've been around the people that went through the stuff. Your day's coming. You go ahead and be arrogant and rude. Your day is coming when God will puff his chest out to you and you can go no further. So keep thinking you're bad. Keep thinking you're tough. Keep playing your vulgar, profane, foul garbage, which is just evidence that you're systemically ruined. Keep doing it. Keep being arrogant and lifted up. Pride goes before a fall. That verse stands over you as witness. So keep going strong, buddy. Ladies, women, well, you're not ladies, females, men that act this way, your day is coming. And it can't come soon enough. I can't imagine what would happen if China just did a major land invasion on us. These young little cowards would be shitting in their pants. Undisciplined, uncultured, no compass. And it shows by your work ethic, your music, your interest, your behavior. You're clocking in late, you're showing up, not showing up, standing around, wasting time, disrespecting those of us that get up and try to do right. If you'd have come into contact with my grandpa back in the day, he would have set you straight. He would have recalibrated your head so fast, it's not even funny. I didn't dare disrespect Papa. Ever. I wouldn't have thought of doing that unless I wanted to commit suicide. School boards and teachers and principals and superintendents are a joke today. Teaching kids there is no God, enabling working for a system. All these people in the school district, it's all political. They just want to get their retirement, get their benefits. You know what the Bible says about causing and teaching one of these little ones to stumble? Yeah, administrators of schools, realize that verse hangs over your head. You proud to be superintendent of a school that teaches there's no God and teaches kids that, hey, what sex am I? Be glad when you stand before the Almighty and he holds you accountable for that. Be glad. You're not educating these kids. You're destroying them. And you parents that aren't paying attention to what your daughter's doing in the bedroom on TikTok and YouTube, you better wake up. I'm a grown man. And I've seen women have been affected negatively by social media. They can get all the attention they like. They don't need me. They don't want me. They don't want an older generation. They want their attention gas tank filled constantly. What a vain, shallow existence. I've had so much love and passion and energy in my heart, and I've spent it wrongly after people that aren't worth 1 second of my time. I too am affected by the changes, by social media. Women have trained me, I'm not worthy of them. And yet, I can go overseas and get a date in a week. Here, years have gone by. And women will get on here and say, well, maybe it's because of the way you dress. Maybe it's because you talk about women. Maybe it's because you don't know what the fook you're talking about. That one is the correct answer. Circle 3 or C. Women have a huge lack of self-awareness in our culture. Dee Dee stood by her husband. She didn't bicker at him. She tried to keep the peace, right or wrong. Papa did look at Playboys, but he didn't run around with the ladies. And if anybody had ever tried to harm or disrespect his wife, he would have been right there and would have said, boy, you better back up because I'm about to let it go. I'd rather have that. I wish I could go back in time and walk in that door and say, Papa, 2026 is bad. What do you have to say today? He loved the ocean. He had a love of the sea. And I caught the fever too. It takes a man to do what he did. No man is perfect. He certainly wasn't. But he was definitely a man. I'm not even as much the man as he is. This generation of men is not as much the man as he is. It's impossible. Something's been lost in the translation. Thank you for listening. This is from my heart. I've got my flaws. I've got my cracks. But you little pieces of crap trolls out there, you need to get saved. You need to get right. You will be held accountable for all your crappy texts and words and hatred and snide remarks. You think that you won't. The Bible says every idle word you give an account to. All of us, every single one of us. Some of you young people, why don't you just shut up and listen to what some of us have to say? Turn off your shitty music and your shitty attitude and learn. It might surprise you. I still learn. I haven't arrived. Some of you come on here and call me an old man and this and that. I'll tell you what, at 60 years old, I'm smarter and better looking than you are. If you even make it to 60. You keep running your mouth out there, somebody might just go, you think you're the only one that's tough? Well, there's a whole bunch of other misinformed people that think they're tough too. So come up against them and watch the fun begin. Ego against ego, and somebody's going to lose. I refuse to get in that arena. Papa didn't go around starting fights. He didn't go around trying to prove something. He lived in an era where people mutually and naturally respected the man that I called Papa. What happened to that today? Sometimes I want to cry because of the callousness of my own self, the decadence of our age, and the decadence that exists within my very soul. People coming on my channel criticizing the clothing, criticizing that I eat, criticizing this. Not all women are like this. I didn't say all women. Get out. Got to have the last word. Got to make your stupid comment. Why don't you let me say what I need to say? And if you don't like it, go away. One thing I'll tell about Papa, he was a Democrat. He didn't put up with this touchy-feely BS. If you were to talk to him, go back in time with this woke thing, he'd say, I can only imagine him going, well, that ain't right. That ain't right. Papa, I think I'm going to be a girl today. And he would look at me with that face. Michael Mass, You're a grown man. Get that out of your head. What's the matter with you? This young generation's demanding we call them by the pronoun of their choice. If you were born a boy, I'm going to call you a boy. You don't like it? Too bad. You don't get to tell me that I have to lie to call you something that you're not. If I'm a witness in a courtroom to a crime, I'm not going to say that woman killed him. It's that dude sitting right there. And Mr. Nelson, that's a woman. No, that's a guy. His name was Steve. You told me not to bear false witness. Don't tell me to bear false witness. Your Honor! What is going on with this generation? They're demon possessed. I swear the devil's running loose in this country. I mean, the devil's laying on the floor laughing and giggling like he's being tickled in the streets of America. He's loving it down here better than loving it at McDonald's. He's got free reign in these young people. They're willing puppeteers. They think they own their thoughts. Girls wearing stuff like this going on TikTok. Oh, I'm so cool. No, you're retarded. You're retarded. And you're going like this, and people that like that are equally retarded. Y'all need to be in a special needs class. Ugh. And I'm not making fun of handicap. I would never make fun of handicap. They don't even act like that. No, this generation is a mess. It is upside down. It's because they don't have old people that are solid anchors. Even when I was in Hong Kong and I lost my mind and sinned and slept with women because I realized the woman I chased over there was an utter failure, I still went to church on Sunday. And I told my pastor, I said, I know I'm not right, but I still need an anchor for my soul. No, Michael, I'm glad you're at least doing that. This young group of people has no anchor. They are ships in an Atlantic storm. Off course. No rudder, no compass. They're just waiting for the next wave to just go and sink them. We had better hold the line, Gen X. Gen X, we're it. We are it. Gen X has the potential of raising up warriors. Gen X has the potential. The baby boomers they're a mess. They're part of the problem. Spoiled all the kids. Now everything from down there is just a waterfall. Sewage. Gen X still has within us. I don't know, man. I still think God's coming is not that far off. Thank you for listening, viewers. Hit the like, hit the subs. I don't charge for memberships. I don't charge for a dang thing. If you want to give, it's Pacific Ocean Asia 77. Did I get that right? Cash tag, Cash App, Pacific Ocean Asia. Yeah, Pacific Ocean Asia 77. The number 77. All one word. Any donation is appreciated. Meanwhile, I need to go to work and work in this woke, jacked, screwed up, upside down, crazy world. Because I will at least try to put my shoe in the footprint of a man called Papa and put my big boy pants on and do what it takes to become a man. I owe him that much. and I'm not the man he was. That's why I speak out. I don't care what people think of me and my clothing. I don't care. In all honesty, I'm sure that Papa wouldn't approve of some of the things I do either. But he did have an effect on me. His effect still courses through my veins more than anybody in my whole family. Every time I look at the ocean, every time I think of ships, Papa comes to mind. He'd take me to the piers. Dee'd take me to the Long Beach or the Redondo Beach Pier. We'd eat scallops. She'd take me to the seashell shops. That's a heritage. The seashell shops weren't these artsy fartsy, cutesy, cliquey little businesses. The seashell shops had dust and they were old buildings and there was stuff everywhere. Divers' tanks and fishing nets and glass floats and giant clams and bizarre stuff. And Papa knew the proprietor and they had a respect and an understanding. This was the old stuff. And the old salts fishing off the end of a pier, never knowing what they were going to catch. Maybe it was an octopus, a small manta, or a stingray or something. I miss that. Now everything's become a circus and a tourist trap. Sitting at the dock of the bay. Yeah, I like some of that old school. Lake Superior, when I moved there in '89, was a wild shoreline right up into Duluth. Then they put in a freaking gay bike path and a scenic railroad. Now, I like the old steam train, but it isn't. The cars are old, but they got a BNSF train that they bought called the Hustle Muscle. And they put in street lights and benches, and then they put in this ugly, tacky, frost-damaged, domed Vietnam War memorial that's deteriorating badly. And what I think is funny is Lake Superior's been dishing out some hellacious storms that have come up and have destroyed the lake walk made out of rainforest wood. Democrats in Duluth, about preserving the planet, bought rainforest wood to make the lake walk. And the lake, and God says, you think you can tame this? And the waves get bigger every year and come up and... I loved it when I moved there and it was dirt and rocks and trees. There was a woman out there posing and modeling. All that went away. Then it was rollerbladers and people walking their dogs and all the flakes that live in Suburbville and all the tourists in the way. Give me that old stuff. There was nobody down there before that. I used to cut home from downtown and walk the old rugged shoreline. Then they tamed it. So much for peace and solitude. Go look at a picture of the Superior shoreline in Duluth. It wasn't like that when I moved there. It was raw. It was rugged. It was awesome. I'd listen to Dvorak in my beautiful 1890s apartment, steam radiators, and look out over that lake. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun. Dvorak's New World Symphony reminded me of a storm out at sea. Papa had an effect. I don't want no home that makes better homes and gardens. I want a house like Papa's, the eclectic, the warmth that I felt in there, the solidness that I felt of a generation of people that you just assume were going to be there. Wow. Sometimes it pays to look back. sometimes to remind us of what we've lost. God bless. Be safe. Get saved, people. Come to Jesus, man. It doesn't end well for you if you don't. I guarantee it. I guarantee it.